thank yous and goodbyes, so we need to get moving. Thank you. Okay, I have quorum, so I will begin. Please take your seats.
Yes, I think to lift your head up when it's...
My intention is to go through the COM documents one by one, starting with number 1. So I'm not going to go for introductions of documents, and I'm basically now limiting interventions to 1 minute. So we'll start with COM 1, draft decisions on the scope and application of a recommendation to suspend trade. And I look to see if there is agreement from the Standing Committee on this COM document, or anyone from the Standing Committee wishing to speak. Not seeing any requests, I will quickly to see if there are, oh, I now have. Thank you. I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We wouldn't support the addition of 20AA and 20BB. We think that 20XX, as amended by the working group, is sufficient for guiding the Secretariat in preparing the materials necessary. We think that 20AA goes beyond what's needed, considering the discussions at SC 77 and the proposal that came forward from there. So we would remove 20AA and BB and stick with 20XX. Thank you, Chair.
Let me be sure I understand correctly. So you support 20XX and the removal of 20AA and 20BB. Got it. I have Belgium.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We can support the UK on this.
I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. Oceania also supports the UK on this. Thank you.
I have Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya has read COM 1 and we propose adoption of these draft decisions. The implementation, we oppose the adoption of these decisions. Their implementation will be complicated and burdensome. We prefer the limited resources of the Secretariat should be focused on assisting parties to implement the convention and to benefit species subject to international trade. We recommend these decisions are rejected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I turn to observer parties. I'll take a few interventions just to note. I have Israel.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, we support Kenya to reject all the draft decisions, but as a fallback proposal, we support the UK and Belgium to just delete A and B and to go with just XX. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Speaking for the United States, we support the revised proposal by the UK.
I have Niger.
Merci bien, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Niger supports Kenya. Thank you.
I'm getting a sense from the Standing Committee that there is support for keeping 20XX as presented in COM 1. I'm looking for a sense from the Standing Committee that we can agree to that. So please do nod your head or thumbs down, thumbs up. Okay, that is so the Standing Committee agrees to decision 20XX in COM 1. Moving on to COM 2, which is the implementation of Article 13 and Resolution COM 14.3 Rev COP 19 on CITES compliance procedures. I'm looking for discussion from Standing Committee members. New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to point out a typographical error in COM2. So a little d should actually be capital B and start with request the Secretariat to review, etc. It's just a typo. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We have Kenya.
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the discussion on Thursday, 6th, on document 34.2 on review of significant trade, and with respect to the implementation of the recommendations of the Animal Committee, we did report on the measures we are implementing to regulate trade in oceanic white-tip shark and the hammerhead shark, a species for which Kenya has been identified under species country combination for the review of significant trade. We have reported to the Secretariat of the Animals Committee that we have since 2021 established a moratorium on trade in oceanic white-tip shark in compliance with measures put in place under the framework of the Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, a regional fisheries management organization to which Kenya is a member. CITES has clear procedures and the processes for parties to follow. We consider that it is premature for the Standing Committee to recommend decisions on compliance measures for Kenya on the oceanic white-tip shark when we have and are already implementing actions requested under Step 2 of the review of significant trade process, including the request to publish a zero annual export quota for the species. Just to confirm the measures that as a country we have already taken. Madam Chair, we would request that Kenya is removed from this decision and we be given time to fully implement the actions requested under the review of significant trade. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I open to observer parties. Observer organizations. I will consult quickly with the Secretariat on Kenya's intervention. I look to the Standing Committee, having heard Kenya's intervention, if they're okay with Kenya being removed from this request. I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. I applaud the actions taken by Kenya in this regard, but I do note that this doesn't mean a trade suspension. It's just reporting back at Standing Committee 79 in November, and at that point would be the logical time to remove Kenya from the process, given we haven't seen the documentation that Kenya talks about, but it sounds as though they've done some very useful conservation work. Thanks.
Thank you, New Zealand. Any others? I'm looking for the Standing Committee. I've got the UK.
Thank you. We can support the sort of initial change proposed by New Zealand, and their approach with regard to Kenya seems sensible, so that all that information can be gathered properly and assessed together. Thank you.
Belgium?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We can agree with the amendment by New Zealand and also their view on Kenya. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm getting a sense that Kenya should be retained. You will be able to respond. You have the information, as New Zealand says, to respond by SC 79 and be removed then, but to respect the process and the request for this information. I'm looking for the Standing Committee. I have Kenya.
Chair, we would request for clarification that with our intervention that we are not being asked to provide the information in A, B by Standing Committee 79, but we'll prove that we have established and we have gazetted an annual export quota to conform with the measures we are taking under the framework of the IOTC, if you can confirm.
I'll turn to the Secretary, but my understanding is that you will be asked these questions if you have the documentation to show your ban is in place. You don't have any information to provide in A and B. Your answer would be, we have a ban, and you would provide that documentation. See the Secretariat nodding that I got it correctly. So I think basically you don't you provide your documentation and you say therefore questions A and B are not applicable. Is that acceptable now? Yes. With that, I then think the Standing Committee agrees to paragraph A here in COM 2. I'm looking for nodding heads. Yes, okay, moving on. We're dealing with COM 3, which is draft amendments to the resolution COMP 11.10, Rev COP 15 on trade in stony corals, and draft decisions on trade in stony corals. So I'm looking for the Standing Committee's reaction to COM 3. I have Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We are not ready to support the definition of live coral as presented in the document SC 78 COM 3. Therefore, we would propose the following amendment, so the definition of live coral would read: live coral hyphen entire specimens or pieces of live corals transported in water and that are identifiable to the level of species or genus. Full stop. And with this change, Madam Chair, we can support the rest of the document as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn to other Standing Committee members. Observer parties. I have New Zealand.
We believe that any further amendments to the draft definitions would require consultations with coral experts, but we understand that there could be some further work done on the definitions, so we would suggest as a solution, rather than wordsmithing here, amending the draft decision 19.178, so that after the sentence, and in consultation with coral reef nations and coral reef experts, make further recommendations as necessary, and then a new sentence on possible amendments to the definitions in the annex to Resolution Conf 11.10, Rev Conf 15 on trade in stony corals, and then followed by the text as it stands. So this could ensure further work could be done. If we could add this to the draft decision, we can support all the amendments as made by Oceania and North American region. Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion. I look to anyone else. I look to reactions to the suggestion put forward by New Zealand. I have the U.S.
The United States supports New Zealand's approach.
I have the UK, followed by Poland.
UK also supports that approach, not to be opening up definitions at this stage. Thank you.
I look to Poland if they can support this approach.
Yes, we can support this approach. And maybe one point of clarification. Do we understand that the other relevant parties can join the Institutional Working Group and it is not limited only to coral reef nations? If yes, yeah, it would be good for us as well. Thank you.
Do you want to read that out? Okay, there is no working group, but the consultations will happen. I'll have the Secretariat read out, at least the way we've captured this change suggested by New Zealand.
Okay, we think we have it here. So New Zealand is proposing in decision 19.178, RevCop 20, in paragraph A, on the second line, after recommendations as necessary, to insert on possible amendments to the definitions in the annex of resolution Conf 1110, RevCop, whatever it is, 15. Thanks.
I see New Zealand nodding, so I think we captured it correctly.
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Okay, I call on New Zealand.
Just add "and" so that it reads definitions and guidelines. Thank you.
I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we also add noting the comments made on live coral so we're not opening the whole thing up for discussion?
So I think my understanding is we're going back to the...
So my understanding is that the definition would stay as is: pieces of live coral transported in water that are identifiable to the level of species or genus. However, we would note the comments made by, I don't know if this one was the North American region, and note those comments.
The European Union, or
and
on behalf of
and the comments made by Poland on behalf of the European Union. Is that okay? And with that, can we agree to COM 3 with those edits? So I read it out, what we're agreeing to. So the Standing Committee agrees to the following. Number one, the committee agrees to submit the amendments to Resolution Conf 1110, RevCop 15 on the trade in stony corals, and the draft decisions in document SC 78, COM 3, as amended by New Zealand. Oceania for consideration at COP20. Number 2, the Standing Committee also agrees to submit the consequential amendments to Resolution Comp 9.6 on the trade in readily recognizable parts and derivatives in Annex 4 to document SC 78, Document 6 to COP20. And finally, the Standing Committee agrees to the amendments to the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports and guidelines for the preparation and submission of the CITES annual illegal trade report as outlined in Annex 2 to document SC 78, Document 60. I know what you're going to ask the U.S. Where did the comments get noted? Because oh, no? Okay. So I call on the U.S. Can't read their mind.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just asking if we could read the revised subparagraph A under Decision 19.178 as revised by Oceania. Just one more time, please.
I'll call on the Secretariat.
Sure, yes. Decision 19.178, Rev Cop 20, subparagraph A. I'll read it out in full just so everyone is clear. So, taking into account the progress made at AC 33 and in consultation with coral reef nations and coral reef experts, make further recommendations as necessary on possible amendments to the definitions and guidelines in the annex of Resolution Conf 1110 to revise the guidelines for preparation and submission of CITES annual reports. Is that repetitive now? I'm just wondering. Yeah. No, it's not. They're separate things. So to revise the guidelines for the preparation and submission of CITES annual reports and guidelines for the preparation and submission of the CITES annual illegal trade report to ensure that they provide sufficient clarity on the use of appropriate terms and units for trade in stony corals. And that's the end of the subparagraph.
I have the UK.
Can I make a suggestion to make it more specific to just be the definition of live coral rather than all definitions?
Yes, that's the only one we really had any discussion of, so that's the one that needs some further work. The U.S.?
And just to clarify, the rest of the document will be agreed upon as in the ComDoc?
Yes, it will. I have the U.S. again.
We also support the approach by the U.K. of limiting it to live coral.
So with this one, the Standing Committee agrees then to the changes I've read out. Seeing nodding heads. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to COM 4, application of Article 13 in the Lao People's Democratic Republic. And you have paragraph 1 and little a, and I call on Singapore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document was prepared by the working group, and I will not read out the edits, but it's in paragraph 1, little a, in the ComDoc. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor for discussion by the Standing Committee members of this. So I look to the Standing Committee if they can agree to 1 little a from the COM document 4, if they agree to COM 4. I'm seeing nodding heads, so this one is agreed to. Com 5 is the resolution Comp 12.10, Rev Cop 15 on the registration of operations that breed Appendix 1 animal species in captivity for commercial purposes, implementation of paragraph 5J of resolution Comp 12.10, Rev Cop 15, and this document was prepared by the drafting group. So I draw the Standing Committee's attention to recommendation 1, paragraph 15B, and then little I, and look for discussion of this. Just to be sure, any observer party wishing to speak to this? All right, then I have Mexico.
Thank you, Madam. Just one suggestion. Until now, we have some 7 strategies in the registers, but they may not be the only ones that are used. So we would suggest an amendment in the second line.
Among others that could appear in the future. Y luego sigue el texto.
And then the text would continue unchanged, just so that we're not restrained to the 7 strategies we have now. Thank you.
I look to the Standing Committee if there's any reaction to what Mexico has suggested to change. And I see the U.S.
We support the amendment by Mexico. Thank you.
Anyone not supporting the amendment by Mexico? Maybe is an easier way to phrase this. Not seeing anyone. Oh, I have the UK.
Sorry, just a very minor one. Is it possible perhaps to change among at the start of the addition to or, just to make it read a little bit easier?
Can you please repeat that, UK?
Sorry, at the start of the addition by Mexico, just to change it to or others that could appear in the future, just to make it read a bit cleaner. Thank you.
Thank you for that helpful. I see Mexico thumbs up. In English, it reads better that way than from what the Spanish was. Okay. Then I look to the Standing Committee to agree to COM 5 with recommendation 15B and little I with the amendment made by Mexico. I see nodding heads. Thank you. Now we turn to COM 6, Rev 1. Rev 1, if you're looking at COP 6. The role of CITES in reducing the risk of future zoonotic disease emergence associated with international wildlife trade, and I turn to Singapore as the working group co-chair of this to introduce the COM document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The revised version simplifies the draft decisions and clarifies some aspects relating to the request to the Secretariat and the parties. The amended COM doc has been provided to the Secretariat, and hence I will not go through the edits here. Furthermore, it was noted by the co-chairs that decisions 19.15, 19.16, and 19.19 have been implemented and can be deleted. Decision 19.18, directed to UNEP, can be renewed to ensure UNEP continues to share information relating to the work of the quadripartite relevant to CITES parties. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I look to the Standing Committee members to begin discussion of this COM document, if it's needed. This discussion. Okay, not seeing any requests. I turn to observer parties. I have the USA.
Thank you. As with our previous intervention on this agenda item, the United States would like to note for the record that we are unable to take a position on this matter at this time. Thank you.
Noted. I turn to observer parties, observer organizations. Then I look to the Standing Committee members if we can agree to adopt COM 6 Rev 1 with deletion of decisions 19.15, 19.16, and 19.19. So I'm looking for smiles, nodding heads, thumbs up. Got them. Thank you. Appreciate the smiles. Moving on to COM 7, which is the report of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. And I turn to New Zealand as working as chair of that subcommittee.
Thank you, Chair. The Finance and Budget Subcommittee met 4 times during Standing Committee 78. All the regions and the depository government were present. New Zealand chaired the meeting as current chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee. Discussions were very well supported by the Secretary-General, the Secretariat and UNEP. Thank you. The Finance and Budget Subcommittee considered Agenda Items 7, 8, 9 and 13, 17B. COM Doc 7 contains the recommendations of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee on all these items, and all members were in agreement with these recommendations. Of note, I draw your attention to Agenda Item 8, Item 8, concerning the proposed budget scenarios for 2026 to 2028. The recommendations at 6 take a strategic approach aimed at facilitating discussions at COP20 by meeting the information needs of parties to make those discussions very efficient. And I draw your attention to the fact that the Finance and Budget Subcommittee could not make a decision on 17B on the arrangements for meetings of the COP and including a line in the budget item for the COP in the next triennium. And at 9, the recommendation on this matter recommends the Standing Committee refer this to COP20 for consideration. I open the floor for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I open up to Standing Committee members. I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. The North America region thanks New Zealand as the chair of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee and the Secretariat for preparing the report. With respect to document 13, the North America region does not support recommendation 17B. Instead of referring recommendation 17B to COP20 as included in the FBSC report, we propose deleting the recommendation. The committee already accepted the draft decisions 20AA to 20CC on arrangements for meetings of the Conference of the Parties contained in document 13 in order to address the challenges faced by parties and the Secretariat in preparing for COPs. It therefore does not make sense to include a budget line item in the core budget for this purpose. We are concerned that including a line item for COPs will increase financial commitments for all parties. Speaking on behalf of the United States strongly opposes recommendation 7B and believes it should be deleted. The United States does not agree to any increases in the core budget and does not agree to any new budget line items. We will not support insertion of a new line item for COP arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the statement made by the United States. We also do not agree on an inclusion of a new budget line for COP arrangements as suggested in paragraph 9A of document com.7, which means significant increase in core budget. There are better ways to accommodate costs for holding COPs rather than simply adding new budget lines. What we need to do are cost cutting and revenue generation as suggested in paragraph 6A of document com.7. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other standing committee members? I open it to observer parties. I have Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We will support the position by the US and Japan in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Senegal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without drawing too much on what others have said, I would like to ask a question. Is it the budget that gives the relevance to the conference of the parties? That's what we have to consider.
So I look to hear for some other standing committee members on this, because what I've heard from the North American region, Japan and Kuwait, they would like to delete 9b. I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. Well, New Zealand would support the status quo with that budget line included. We therefore don't agree with the suggestion from Oceania with the intervention made by the United States, Japan and Kuwait.
Thank you. I look to other standing committee members. And I have Kenya.
Chair, in the work of the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, speaking on behalf of Africa, where Africa was represented by Kenya and Tanzania, we had discussion in this work, in the margin of this meeting, and the subcommittee, just like US and Japan, we agree with the comment, but considering that in the discussions we had discussion about the challenges that we may have as parties, especially when preparing for COPs, and the request by the Secretariat for inclusion of a budget line is now upon this committee. Africa would agree that there is need to, even when we agree on the deletion of Part B or Part 9, there is need for the standing committee going forward to seriously think about the arrangements for future COPs. And maybe at a later date, it is agreed on how that approach can be managed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have Switzerland.
Thank you, Chair. Switzerland echoes the Oceania region. Thank you.
Okay, I will consult with the Secretariat because I'm sort of division in the room here on the budget, so I will on the way forward. So let me see. This is a very important matter, finance and budget. It addresses how CITES can function. So I would like to hear from some other standing committee members that have not yet spoken. I have the UK and then Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. We can support the US proposal.
I have Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think that if this issue is, I mean, in the COP we can decide whatever we want, and I think that we should not limit ourselves at this point, and I think there's, I mean, if we can forward this decision to the COP, it would be more advisable at this point. Thank you.
I have Morocco.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morocco is leaning in the same direction as Kenya. Thank you.
I see Senegal requesting, but I'm not opening up the floor anymore to observer parties. I'm really looking for a sense here of the standing committee members so we could move forward. I've heard from two others. I still think we're sort of might split in the middle, but maybe I haven't heard correctly. So. I have Honduras and Kuwait. Honduras supports the United States position. And I have Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We can accept the proposal made by Brazil and move this matter to the Conference of the Party to take decision.
Well, this is going to the Conference of the Party. The decision is going. What we're doing here is, what we're discussing here is whether there is a line in the COP20 budget, and what I'm hearing is that there's more support, or even, it's sort of in middle right now, not to include that line in the COP20, but it will be discussed in the future decisions that at the COP. So it's really just this, invite them to put this budget line in for COP20, or just take it out, and at COP20 we do not discuss that budget line, but the future budgets based on the decision may include that discussion of that budget line. So it's what the Standing Committee would like to do. I think I'm getting more countries wanting to get rid of little b, not an invite for it at COP20, but I just want to be sure that everyone has understood it, because what Brazil said was about the decisions, and the decision is going to the COP. What is before us now is if we want to invite a budget line for COP20, in COP20, and it seems like that's not support for that. I really do not want to go on a vote for this one, so I propose we, talking to the Secretariat, I know it's sort of split, but that we would take out little b and not invite it, and then you can have this discussion for future COPs. Is that a way forward? Because I really don't want to vote on this particular matter. All right, thank you for that, and thank you to the Secretariat for their understanding too. I will move on to COM 8, which is additional recommendations and draft decisions on Brazil wood. And I look to, myself. So basically, I now open discussion from the Standing Committee members on COM 8. Not seeing any requests, I look to observer parties just to give them an, I now have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The United States has one addition to recommendation 1A. So after, in the second line about allowing parties, we'd also like to allow also other relevant stakeholders to consider and respond prior to COP20. We don't want the responses to be limited to parties. We'd like other relevant stakeholders to be allowed to respond to Brazil's notification to collect the most information on the topic. So it would read, invite Brazil to share via notification any relevant information on Pau Brasilia Ecanada, and allowing parties and other relevant stakeholders to consider and respond to it prior to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties.
I have Brazil.
Thank you. We completely agree with the suggestion from the US. Thank you.
All right, I have no requests from observer parties. Observer organizations, just want to check on this one. I have two. I will take one and I call on ITTO.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. We do agree with the suggestion made by United States. Thank you.
So I go back to the Standing Committee now with the amendment made by the United States to 1A. Can the Standing Committee members agree to COM 8 as amended by the United States in 1A? I see nodding heads. Okay, we will conclude that one. Moving on to COM 9, elephants, the Mike Edis subgroup meeting. I will turn to Belgium to introduce this COM document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Mike Edis subgroup was able to conclude its mandate from the Standing Committee in one session, and you find the results of that in relation to SC Doc 65.2 and 65.3 in ComDoc 9. Thank you.
Thank you. I open the floor to Standing Committee members. I open the floor to observer parties. I open the floor to observer organizations. Not seeing any requests. Big thank you to the Mike Edis subgroup for the work they've done. I ask the Standing Committee to agree to the recommendations in COM 9. Look for thumbs up, smiles, nodding heads. Got them. Okay, we agree to COM 9. We now move on to COM 10, Resolution COMP 1210, Rev COP 15 on registration of operations that breed Appendix 1 species in captivity for commercial purposes. And I turn to the working group chair, the USA.
Thank you, Chair. Document SC78, COM 10, was prepared by a small drafting group that was led by the United States and included Belgium, the European Union, India, Israel, and the United Kingdom on the basis of document SC78, Doc 61.1. In addition to the other amendments to Resolution Conf 12.10 presented in document SC78, Doc 61.1, the drafting group and agreed in plenary, the drafting group recommends the several amendments noted here in the COM document. The first set of amendments concern the monitoring of registered captive breeding operations and some relatively minor word changes. The second set of changes here are also relatively minor and were discussed and agreed within the drafting group. I would make a small amendment here for ease of reading for proper English, and that is with regard to paragraph 5K to add 2 commas. So any party believing, comma, based on documented evidence-based concerns, comma, that a registered operation does not comply, and then continue on as presented in the document. So we invite the Standing Committee to agree to these additional amendments to Resolution Conf 1210 Rev Cop 15. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. US, for that editorial change, it's not a substantive change to that paragraph. So I open the floor to the Standing Committee members, and this was a drafting group, right? So my apologies, I said working group. Anyway, I open it up to the Standing Committee members for discussion. Not seeing any requests, I turn to observer parties. I have Mexico.
Gracias, señora Presidenta.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one clarification. We can see the document that came from the drafting group, and we are grateful for the work done. However, I have still got a question on the rest of the working document, in particular an amendment that Mexico requested to remove the reference of the Standing Committee at the point of saying which products remain covered in the register. Thank you.
Give us a few minutes to check this. Can I ask Mexico, we're looking at the executive summary, can you repeat what your amendment specifically was?
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you. Yes. In 20 of the working document, there's a proposal which starts, the Secretariat shall publish the Register of Operations, and at the end of that paragraph, it says any exclusions of products from the registration for the operation. And we'd like to remove that part. The reference to the Standing Committee.
I have Belgium.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We believe that that the previous statement was correct and that this was an omission, and if by deleting the reference to the Standing Committee in paragraph 5H of the original document, we bring it in line with what we decided in the drafting group 5K, so that the reference to the Standing Committee should be deleted in our view from paragraph 5H. Thank you.
I've heard from Belgium. Are there any other comments on this suggestion from Mexico? I got the USA.
Thank you, Chair. We don't agree. We don't recall this element being agreed during the discussions earlier this week in the plenary, and it was also not included in the mandate to the drafting group. So our suggestion would be for to suggest that Mexico bring this issue to COP20 and discuss it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, it wasn't in the mandate for the small drafting group. I do recall them bringing it up, but who omitted that one? Okay, I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. I think we can support the suggestion from Mexico. It looks like a consequential amendment based on what was agreed in the drafting group. But yeah, I appreciate there may be mandate issues. But thank you.
So I guess I'm looking for some other standing committee members on a way forward. I've heard 2 standing committee members supporting Mexico's suggested text change. And I've heard from Belgium, who was in the drafting group, that making this change would be consistent with what the working group decided in paragraph K. So it may not have been in your specific mandate, but it seems as if it would add consistency. And again, this is going to the COP for further discussion and decisions. I have Japan.
And Japan support Mexico.
I guess I'll rephrase my question to see if there are any standing committee members. I know we've heard from the U.S. on their approach that don't support Mexico's change.
Thank you, Chair. I think we don't, in fact, agree that this is that this would just be a follow-on from what was agreed in the drafting group. So what we discussed in the drafting group was concerned facilities, operations that are already included in the register. So the paragraph that is the point of discussion right now is with regard to the registration on the front end. So those are at 2 different points in the process, in the sort of stream of registered operations. So we don't agree that that this is simply a consequential decision based on those discussions. Thank you, Chair.
I have Honduras.
Thank you. We've decided that really we support Mexico on this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm looking for any other standing committee members, and I'll consult with the Secretariat because I understand what the U.S. concerns are, and it's unfortunate we didn't send this to the working group, Mexico's amendment, to the drafting group. Okay, so I'm looking, I've got Belgium again, so I'll let Belgium go and then I'll sort of propose some text.
Apologies, we were perhaps a bit too quick. When I spoke earlier, we hadn't fully digested it, and we realize now that indeed this is talking about the initial registration, and there the Standing Committee can exclude certain products, so it can be left in. And we also don't want to open up discussions again after the very constructive results of the drafting group or working group we had this week. Thank you.
Given what we've just heard from Belgium and the U.S., I guess the chair would propose that the Standing Committee agree with the amendments to Resolution Comp 10, Rev Cop 15, as contained in the annex with the amendments agreed in document SC 78 Comp 10, and invite Mexico to submit their proposed amendment to COP 20. And see Mexico shaking their head. I'm cognizant of the fact that we have 8 COM docs, 8 executive summaries, and 8 agenda items left, and so I'm trying to find a resolution here. I have Canada wishing to speak, so I'll have Canada speak, followed by Mexico.
Thank you, Chair. And I recognize we may not find a resolution here, but my understanding of the inclusion of this particular inclusion that Mexico drew our attention to is related to that first publication of the registry. So I still don't see the value in including the reference to the Standing Committee. And so I think maybe we have a bit of a collective misunderstanding of the intent or the pathway through here. I'm not quite sure, Chair. I don't know that I have a good offer for you forward, other than I do think it might be a better starting point to remove the Standing Committee and then have that further discussion at COP to see that we understand these processes correctly. Thank you, Chair.
Mexico.
Thank you, Madam. We think that Canada's proposal is a good one, and we would invite members of the Standing Committee to take Canada up on that proposal. Thank you, Madam.
Can I get reactions to Canada's proposal from Standing Committee members? I'm seeing some nodding heads, some not, and I think the majority are nodding yes. I am reluctant to take this to a vote too. I've got the USA.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of the United States and also as the chair of this intersessional working group, as you noted, it's unfortunate that we didn't have additional opportunity to discuss this here, but but it was not agreed in the plenary earlier this week, and it was not part of the discussions of this drafting group. And so we don't believe that it would be appropriate to make a pivot at this time with regard to the discussions up to date. Thank you, Chair.
We're losing a lot of time here, so I go back to the way I read this would be to agree the amendments to Resolution Comp 12.10. Rev Cop 15 is contained in the annex with amendments agreed in document 78 Comp 10, and invite Mexico and possibly Canada to submit its proposed amendment to COP 20. Because of the fact that there was not discussion of this in the drafting group and in the plenary. I mean, that's why I guess it was still open-ended. We didn't have agreement to Mexico's change or much discussion. So I think the fairest thing to do is to send the COM document forward, and if Mexico would like, this document will be this will be discussed extensively at COP20, and so Mexico can raise it there. Is that a way forward? I see nodding heads, and I see Mexico. I'll give you the floor one more time, but I really do need to move on.
Thank you, Madam. Just one comment, if I may. On a matter of procedure, I understand that, but there was no consensus on this matter in the intersessional working group, which does come up in the working group. So it didn't need to come up as a proposal if there had been no agreement on it. So the intersessional working group didn't agree on it. So the best thing might have been to include this language, since there was no agreement in the intersessional working group. There's no reason why this language was included. And we would perhaps suggest that this language be in square brackets, because the intersessional working group did not agree this, and this committee has not agreed it either. Thank you, Madam.
I've been told to really avoid brackets. I think the fact that there was no consensus in the intersessional working group suggests to me that there wasn't consensus on this particular thing as others. We sent a drafting group to deal with the things where I thought we could get consensus on, but this was not part of that drafting group. And so I go forward and look to the Standing Committee. If they can agree with my decision, that would read, agree the amendments to Resolution Comp 1210, Rev Cop 15 is contained in the annex with amendments agreed in document SC 78 Com 10, and the Standing Committee invites Mexico to submit its proposed amendments to COP 20. And after proposed amendments, we can put the description of what you're suggesting. Instead, that would be the compromise rather than bracketed text. So that the Standing Committee is inviting you to do that. And I hope that we can then move forward on this agenda item. So I look to the Standing Committee for a reaction to that suggestion. And I'm also looking to see that we can consider whether the work under decision 19.181 is complete. That I have agreement on. So it's the little c. I've got nodding heads, so we'll go forward with that, and apologies, Mexico. Mexico, I will give you the, no, you're done? Okay. Give you the floor for one more minute. I really, at this point, have an obligation to get through the rest of the agenda.
It's less than a minute. Just want our declarations on record, please.
Your declaration will be on record. I now turn our attention to COM 11, access to funding, and I call on New Zealand as the chair of this small drafting group to report.
Thank you, Chair. This small drafting group on access to funding was comprised of Belgium, Brazil, Japan, Kenya, Kuwait, United States and New Zealand as chair. The drafting group was directed to consider decisions 18.4 and 19.4 through to 7, but we later understood it was also intended to include 19.8 and 19.9 and have addressed these too. The drafting group considered each decision in turn, identifying those which most reflect the work of the Secretariat and were appropriate for inclusion in Resolution Conf 19.1. The recommendations include revision of Decision 19.4 and 19.5 and renewal of Decision 19.6 and revisions to the Resolution 19.1, which are set out in ComDoc 11. There was consensus on the recommendations with one exception. I draw attention of the Standing Committee to revise Decision 19.5 where there are in fact square brackets concerning the words ensuring and supporting on which the drafting group could not agree. I open the floor for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. You've opened the floor for discussion. Standing Committee members. And I would like some discussion of the bracketed text, I guess, or there's no consensus there. So turn to observer parties. I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports supporting, and we would also like to draw the attention to what looks like a typo in 19.4. It looks as though Jeff 9 is crossed out. There should be a 9 there. Thank you.
I have Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Brazil prefers ensuring, and this is because this reflects the same language that we approved in COP19. So what we are trying to do here is to maintain coherence and maintain the agreed language to COP20. Thank you very much.
I have Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the US on both amendments that they mentioned. Also on the supporting, because we feel that parties or organizations who provide financial or technical advice can only support in the effective implementation, and we see that as an omittance of, as a mistake that was made at the last decision. So therefore, we support the amendment here. Thank you.
Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the United States because the money we are providing cannot ensure anything, just supporting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any observer parties? Observer organizations? And so I go back to, I have 3 Standing Committee members expressing support for the word supporting and 1 Standing Committee member ensuring. So my suggestion, I've got the UK.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I was just going to come in to supporting.
Okay, it seems like the Standing Committee is leaning to the word supporting. Again, do not wish to go to a vote on this. And so my suggestion would be we accept the COM document. The Standing Committee agrees to COM 11 with the change to decision 19.5 to use the word supporting and send it to the COP with that word. I have Kenya and then I have Brazil.
Chair, we go with the support as opposed to ensuring. Thank you.
Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In the spirit of compromise and to, find a consensus here and avoiding any voting, Brazil can withdraw the word ensuring, even though we'd like to put in record that we are changing agreed language, and this may weaken efforts to provide financial assistance to developing countries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil, for that compromise. Is that, so I look to the Standing Committee then that we can accept or live with the word support here, supporting. Okay, I see nodding heads. Okay, thank you. Now we move on to COM 12, legal acquisition findings, and I turn to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. COMDoc 12 has been prepared by the Secretariat at the request of the Standing Committee in relation to Agenda Item SC 78 Doc 47 on legal acquisition findings after discussion in the fourth session of the plenary. Comments have been received from Canada, New Zealand on behalf of Oceania, the European Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. Considering the complexity of the topic and of the document, and being cognizant of time, the Secretariat would propose a revised approach to this document that would allow for further consideration of this topic at COP20, and if needed, in the next intersessional period. If the committee agrees with this approach, the Standing Committee could rephrase recommendations starting at little c. The new recommendations would read: C, agree to submit to the COP the amendment to Annexes 1 and 3 to Resolution Conf 18.7 Ref COP 19 contained in Annex 2 to Document 47 with the amendments proposed in the COMDoc. D, request the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties to gather additional feedback and comments on the draft guidance contained in Annex 3 to Document 47. E, request the Secretariat to prepare a revised draft guidance taking into account comments made during this meeting, the COMDoc, and feedback received to the notification, and submit these to the Conference of the Parties for discussion at its 20th meeting. F, request the Chair of the Standing Committee, in consultation with the Secretariat, to prepare draft decisions to be submitted at COP20 to allow for further consideration of this draft guidance in the next intersessional period. These recommendations would in fact replace recommendation C, D, and E in current document 47. If necessary, the Secretariat can read again the recommendations, Chair.
Since this is important and I'm hoping it would cut down on the discussion, perhaps you can read the revised C, D, and E as you suggest once more.
Yes, Chair. So the recommendations that would replace the current C, D, and E would read: little c, agree to submit to the COP the amendment to Annexes 1 and 3 to Resolution Conf 18.7 Rep COP 19 contained in Annex 2 to Document 47 with the amendments proposed in the COMDoc. D, request the Secretariat to issue a notification to the parties to gather additional feedback and comments on the draft guidance contained in Annex 3 to Document 47. E, request the Secretariat to prepare a revised draft guidance taking into account comments made during this meeting, the COMDoc, and feedback received to the notification, and submit these to the Conference of the Parties for discussion at its 20th meeting. And F, request the Secretariat of the Chair of the Standing Committee, in consultation with the Secretariat, to prepare draft decisions to be submitted at COP20 to allow for further consideration of this draft guidance in the next intersessional period.
Thank you. I now open it up for Standing Committee members' discussion. I have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we would strongly support the proposal by the Secretariat. This particular issue is of great concern to the Oceania region. We've experienced significant problems with endemic species being smuggled out of Oceania countries to satisfy demands of the pet trade. Many examples where endemic species that have never legally been exported from our region now appear in international trade outside the region. This situation parallels that of the Spix macaws we've heard earlier, Galapagos iguanas, Mexican ambronia lizards, Mexican tortoises, and so on. So this whole concept of legal acquisition is incredibly important, and we want it noted that that chain of custody goes right back to the fundamental concepts of the convention, that the specimens were not obtained in contravention with the laws of the state for the protection of fauna and flora. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn to the UK.
Thank you, Chair. We also agree with the new way forward and recommendations proposed by the Secretariat, given that this is an important issue, as New Zealand has already highlighted. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Brazil.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We agree with your proposition. We just want to put in the record that Brazil was concerned about the numerous and significant changes made in the CON document. We think that many of those changes contradicts the spirit of the original document, and the one was Annex 3. And we think that these kind of changes should be done in a more inclusive and much more inclusive discussion. So we think this is a matter of great importance as well. We completely agree with the New Zealand representative that this is a matter of great importance, and we will be happy to discuss this in COP20. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North American region supports your proposed way forward.
Thank you. Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree with the previous speakers that this is a very important matter, and we would have liked to make progress at this meeting. We think that the current version is a good way forward, with one exception on the founder stock, to which we do not agree, but in the spirit of compromise, we can accept the way forward as presented by the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We share the concern just mentioned by Brazil, and we support the way to move forward. Thank you.
Observer parties. Oh, Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. We share the concern voiced by Brazil and continue to support the efforts to continue forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the DRC.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We also agree with Brazil. Thank you.
All right. I have several parties wishing to speak. I'll pick one because I think I've got a sense from the Standing Committee. Senegal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interests of time, we would like to say we support Brazil and New Zealand on this. Thank you, Madam.
And then I'll look to see if there's one observer organization who wishes to speak. Not seeing any, will consult with the Secretariat to be sure I've got this, and I'll come back. So in my summary, the Standing Committee agrees to COM 12 with the revised C and D and E suggested by the Standing Committee Chair, and F, C, D, and E, C, D, E, and F as revised by the Chair in consultation with the Secretariat. So we accept the COM document with those changes, and I truly appreciate the spirit of compromise here and everyone's willingness. I know some wanted resolution now, but I think this is, as New Zealand has aptly said, a very important matter that gets to the core of the convention, particularly when we're dealing with endemic species. And so I hope we can continue this work and have some resolution. So thank you for accepting this way forward. So I introduced COM 13, draft revised proposals related to document SC 78, document 65.6 on trade in Asian elephants. And this was prepared by a small drafting group. And so I look for discussion by standing committee members. Turn to observer parties. I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. Speaking on behalf of the United States and as a member of this small drafting group, we would support the text as shown in this document, SC 78, COM 13. We would just note in the small subparagraph 4, that the language that we agreed in the drafting group, beginning with if parentage of an elephant born in captivity is unknown, the remainder of that subparagraph, it should be offset with underlined text, because this was text that we developed in the drafting group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that correction. I turn to India.
Thank you, Chair. This revised draft in Doc 65.6 was developed along with the US and Kuwait, and we agree with the suggestions given by US. Thank you, Chair.
I have Israel.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I apologize for taking the floor, but we had requested some clarification on the previous COM 12. Just clarification, please. In your comments, you said we're accepting COM 12. And I'm not sure what you mean by accepting. Does that mean that all the text is transferred with all the cross-outs and suggestions? So we're not sure what you mean by accepting COM 12. If we could ask for a bit of clarification, please. Thank you.
Apologies. Essentially, Standing Committee notes. Let me. Thank you, Israel, for that. Yes, guess I'm getting tired now. The Standing Committee agrees to C, D, E, and F as revised. And the rest of the COM is not agreed to. It's basically the decisions that have to go forward. Does that clarify, Israel?
I'm not clear, because C was also, if I heard the Secretary properly, was to accept COM 12. So I'm not sure exactly what C, it went by very quickly and we're all tired. So I apologize if I'm a little confused too. Thank you.
I'll call on the Secretariat to help the chair out here.
Thank you for the question, Israel. The new recommendation C would be to accept the amendments to Annex 2 of the documents which appear in the ComDoc 12, but only this section, so the amendment to Annex 1 and 3 of the resolution which appear on ComDoc 12. The new recommendations D, E, and F would deal with the Annex 3, so to the document 47, so the second part of the ComDoc, and this one is moved aside, and basically the process will be under the new recommendations for the Secretariat to issue a notification, gather comments, and come back with the new documents at COP20. That's where the difference is.
I call on Israel.
Now I'm sorry, I'm totally confused because there's annexes to the document, there's annexes to the COM document, and there's annexes to the resolution. So I'm a little confused which annex we're actually changing, and perhaps a little clarity as to exactly what does paragraph 22C or the new C actually approve. Thank you, Chair.
If you take your COM 12, you look at the first 2 pages, which are, you have some text about practical tools, some text about the rapid guide, and the big, nice, flow chart. This, I think, we agree to propose to the COP. Now, the non-binding guidance, which are all the pages after that, there's a whole process where we will issue a notification, we'll gather feedback, and then we will bring it to the COP. Hopefully that will clarify. We'll redraft, revise, etc. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have Brazil.
Thank you very much for the clarification. But there is a point of, I need to indicate that we haven't have agreement that is non-binding or binding or just guidance. So, I mean, just to clarification that we are just referring to Annex 3 of the previous document, right? Thank you very much.
Yes, it was just a matter of trying to make sure they find it in the document, that's all.
So does that clear up COM 12 and what the Standing Committee agreed to here? Not seeing it. I got thumbs up from Israel. Okay, we will move on to COM 13. Which was the trade in Asian elephants, and I had opened it up to the Standing Committee, and I have Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We'll support the document with the amendment made by the U.S. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was clear. Anyone else wishing to speak on this one? Observer parties? Observer organization? Then Standing Committee agrees to the amendments suggested in Recommendation B as amended. No, not that. Agrees to the amendments in 1B and then agrees to the amendments in paragraph 4 as amended by the U.S. here. I'm looking for agreement, nodding heads, thumbs up. Should have turned my page over, and the Standing Committee agrees to the amendments suggested in draft decision 20AA. So now I look for nodding heads, thumbs up, and I have them. Okay, thank you. And now we move on to agenda item COM. Okay. COM 14 on sharks and rays, and I invite New Zealand to introduce this COM document as co-chair of the working group.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On behalf of my co-chair from the United States, who's had to return home, I present this document. I note that in the decisions, there were two changes made by the working group to the addendum to Doc 70 that the Secretariat had very kindly compiled for us to make sure that we didn't overlap and duplicate decisions. But one thing that we omitted to note was that if these decisions are accepted, then decisions 19.222 to 19.227 will have been implemented and can be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the U.S. and New Zealand for chairing this working group, and thank you for the introduction. So I now open the floor to standing committee members, parties, observer organizations all at once, and have a discussion. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The North American region supports the outcome of the Sharks and Rays in Session Working Group as reflected in SC 78, COM Doc 14. We would like to propose additional language in paragraph 1E and to decision 20CC subparagraph G. In paragraph 1E, regarding catch locations, we propose adding the following to the end of the paragraph: and practical guidance on how parties can consistently and accurately collect this information for all relevant trade. In Annex 1...
Can I ask you to repeat that, please?
Yes, Chair. And practical guidance on how parties can consistently and accurately collect this information for all relevant trade.
Thank you. Go on.
In Annex 1, Decision 20CC, subparagraph G, we suggest adding a reference to the related work in Decision 20B, paragraph AIII, which invites parties to share with the Secretariat challenges related to transport of biological samples for research and data collection purposes in the context of fisheries management. So adding this reference would ensure that the responses received from the parties informs the work described in 20 CC subparagraph G. So the text would read as follows. At the end of 20 CCG, add the response to notifications in 20 BBAII, and the rest of the paragraph goes as follows. We also propose a technical edit in Annex 1, Decision 20AA little a and 20BB little ai to delete in accordance with and replace with consistent with. And we do propose that same edit in Annex 2, Decision 20AA little ai to also delete in accordance with and replace with consistent with when referring to the resolutions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I may come back to you. Okay, I'm looking for a reaction to the document and then the suggestions from the United States. I have open to observer parties, observer organizations, All right, I'm looking for agreement from the Standing Committee to the COM document with the amendments proposed by the U.S., which are really to add more clarity and consistency. So I have New Zealand.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I think I could certainly live with those changes that the United States have suggested.
I'm looking for nodding heads, thumbs up, that we can agree to this COM document with the suggestions made by the U.S. Thank you. I'm just trying to finish too fast. So then I have to move on to the recommendations in the three documents, 70.1, 70.2, and 70.3. And so in document 70.1, regarding recommendations in paragraph 19A and B, the Standing Committee agrees to submit the proposed amendments to Annex 3 of Resolution Conf 18.7, Rev Cop 19, to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, with option 1 as the preferred option. And then regarding recommendations in paragraph 19C to F and 20, they have been considered in the COM document that we just agreed to. So I'm looking as to agreement on the proposed amendments. Seeing nodding heads, and we'll move on to the next thing remaining, which is document 70.2. The Standing Committee agrees to recommendation in paragraph 9A and paragraph 9B, as was considered in the COM document. Got nodding heads, okay. Moving to document 70.3, the Standing Committee agrees to recommendation in paragraph 53A, and the recommendations in 53B to E were considered in the COM document, so we have to agree to 53A in document 70.3. So looking for, seeing nodding heads. And finally, the Standing Committee agrees that decisions 19.222 to 19.227 have been implemented and can be proposed for deletion. Seeing agreement on that. And with that, we conclude this COM document and the three documents. A little difficult to manage three documents. Moving on to COM 15, which is identifying information on species at risk of extinction affected by international trade. And the Secretariat has a correction, I believe it's a correction to 20BB and 20DD.
Thank you, Chair. The document COM 15 was prepared by the Secretariat at the request of the Standing Committee. On page 2, in decision 20BB, subparagraph A, we would like to add at the end, after plus their lookalikes, including the name of the party or parties that submitted the information and the date of submission, to be clear which party submitted the information and the date it was submitted. Apologies for that omission. And then just an editorial amendment to 20.DD. It should read, the Standing Committee, in consultation with the Animals and Plants Committee, will review, as appropriate, the progress on the implementation of decisions 20AA to 20CC as reported by the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
So I'm looking for the Standing Committee discussion. Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan supported the oral decision in the document COM 15 with modification presented by the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just support the document as amended by the Secretariat and would just ask a question about whether we need to include something to report to the COP, to COP 20 or 21. Thank you.
Nope, there isn't any decision to do that. There is no hearing from the Secretary. There's no instructions to report back to COP 21. So I guess we're looking at our notes from the original discussion. The North American region had actually deleted the text that had said provide any recommendations relating to paragraphs A and B to the 21st meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So if you are now suggesting you want to put this back or some other text, you need to suggest that, because it is not going back to the 21st meeting of the COP.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just wanted to confirm whether or not that is the appropriate way to go here. I was approached by some of my colleagues in North America region, so I just wanted to check. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. We need to get these documents clear. So with that, can I ask the Standing Committee if they agree to these draft decisions with the correction by the Secretariat in COM 15, 20 AA, 20 BB, 20 CC, and 20 DD? See nodding heads. I think we can accept that. Thank you. Moving on to COM 16, which is the engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities. And I turn to the drafting group chair, Canada, to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of the drafting group. So COM 16 was prepared following the meeting of the Standing Committee members drafting group on this topic and reflects the modified recommendations to the Standing Committee. Notably, the discussion on terminology, as anticipated, could not be concluded, and it was determined that this is a matter best left for the COP to discuss. On the guidance, other than terminology, no additional changes were accepted, and again, it was considered best to leave this to the consideration of the Conference of the Parties. And then finally, the group agreed to advance the decisions, and the only amendments that with an amendment proposed by Oceania. The terminology thus throughout these documents has reverted back to what was agreed at COP 18 regarding reference to Indigenous peoples and local communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I invite discussion by the Standing Committee members. I have Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia would like to thank the work of the Working Committee and would like to reiterate our position that would like to maintain the wording used, Indigenous people and local communities without a comma. Thank you.
Thank you. I look to observer parties. Of the USA.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the United States, as with our previous intervention on this agenda item, the United States would like to note for the record that we are unable to take a position on this matter at this time. Thank you.
I have observer organizations. And I will conclude discussion now and consult with the Secretariat on the next step. So I'm asking the Standing Committee if Standing Committee agrees with little a, little b, little c, and D in the COM document 16. So I'm looking for thumbs up, nods, getting those. And Indonesia, your comment will be noted in the record. Thank you. I turn our attention to COM document 17, draft decisions and draft resolution on unguilid eels. And this is basically, we're looking at draft conclusions. We're looking at draft decisions and draft resolution on unguilid eels. And it's a report from the drafting group that was chaired by the UK. So I turn to the UK to introduce the COM document.
Thank you, Chair. We had a lot of interest in this drafting group, so my thanks to the collaborative and flexible approach of the drafting group members to allow us to report back with the text that's in ComDoc 17. There were just 3 points I wanted to highlight. The drafting group had support for the inclusion of the additional paragraph set out in paragraph 17 of SC 78 Doc 69.1, referencing IUCN guidelines in any draft resolution. And so for the Standing Committee to recommend the COP include this paragraph if these guidelines have been finalized and published in time for review by parties ahead of COP20. There was also support from a number of drafting group members for a set of proposals put forward by China to differentiate some of the activities in the draft resolution between European eels and other anguillid eel species. These proposals would split out the activities included in operational paragraph 1, paragraphs B, C, and E, to a new paragraph encouraging these activities in relation to other anguillid eel species. As there was not consensus within the drafting group, we agreed to retain the original structure developed by the Standing Committee Working Group relating to these proposals. And finally, the Republic of Korea sought additional time to consider the text in bold in paragraph 4 of the ComDoc, so this text was not supported by consensus in the drafting group. Thank you.
Thank you. I open up this COM document for discussion among Standing Committee members. I have Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to thank again the working group for drafting this important resolution. We welcome the work of the drafting group and the spirit of compromise. We do, however, have one comment we would like to raise at this stage on the new proposed decision 20DD, letter B. The EU and its member states question the added value of the proposed exploration due to the biology of unguillid eel species. We are of the opinion that the word farmed is not applicable and appropriate to unguillid eel species. In order to be able to accept the newly proposed decision, we would like to replace the word farmed by the word, or the phrase, raised in aquaculture. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We we thank the UK as the chair of drafting group for preparing the draft resolution. We would like to invite the Standing Committee to consider to adopt the proposal of separating European eel and other eel species in the resolution put forward by China in the drafting group. The proposal fully takes into account the difficulties and challenges faced by range parties of non-listed eel species in implementing the resolution in lack of an international and domestic legal basis. It is hoped that the adoption of such amendments will facilitate the implementation of the resolution and achieve the desired effect. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer parties. I have the Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Republic of Korea express its appreciation to the chairs and the members of the working group for their effort on eel resolution. Korea made a small amendment in the paragraph 4. Just behind the such as regional fisheries management organization and regional fisheries body. Instead, remove this text. Instead, instead of RFMO and RFBs, International Council for the Exploration of the Sea and General Fisheries Commission for the Mediterranean. The CMS is a specific example of the international instruments. However, RFMO and RFB is general terms for international bodies or instruments. So Korea would like to give the specific example for the international bodies or instrument. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. We support adoption of the document as presented in this CALM document with the amendment suggested by Poland. Thank you.
I call on China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China would like to invent a standing committee to consider to adopt the proposal of limiting activities related to domestic illegal trade, non-detriment findings to European eel in the draft resolution put forward by China in the drafting group. Further, we believe the wording urged is not appropriate for activities which concern non-listed species. China's proposal fully considers the difficulties and the challenges faced by range parties of non-listed eel species in implementing the resolution, considering the lack of a legal basis. It is hoped that the adoption of such amendments will facilitate the implementation of the resolution and achieve the desired results. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have several parties, at least 6, wishing to speak. I'll call on the Standing Committee members first and then the parties, but I do ask you to be brief and keep your views to the CALM document. UK?
Thank you, Chair. Speaking for the UK, we would support the changes and amendments from Poland and the Republic of Korea. And as for the package of proposals by China, we understand the intent and looking to make sure the activities are sitting in the appropriate place. But we think this discussion should probably best be had at COP20 at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. India?
Thank you, Chair. We were of the opinion that this particular document was a very generic recommendation to the entire species of entire genus of the angulate eels. Out of the 19 species, only 1 species is currently listed, and this particular resolution recommends a very generic regulations on all the remaining 18 species, which is practically not implementable, and it's legally not binding. So we would recommend, along with China and and Indonesia, that as a compromise, this document can be taken to COP for further discussions there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I have Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Just to briefly echo support as indicated by the United Kingdom and the United States, including for Poland's suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. I turn to Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Hearing the comments from China and India, also Indonesia, I think we can mostly agree with them. I think this is a convention that always should look at the conservation measures, but also take into account national circumstances. And I think it's important to separate the implications that we have for each of those species, so that we are being very cognizant of each national circumstances. So Brazil would support China, Indonesia, and India in that regard. Thank you very much.
Lau.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Lao PDR firmly support the statement made by Indonesia and China. Thank you.
Cambodia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cambodia support Indonesia and China position on this particular species of ungulate eel. Thank you.
Dominican Republic.
Gracias. Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the United States, Poland, and the United Kingdom. Thank you, Madam.
Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. We will support Indonesia statement. Thank you.
And then I have the Republic of Korea, and I think I will cut the observer parties off there. I'm getting a sense. Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just echoing the China and Indonesia. Thank you.
I'm getting a sense that the Asian countries are supportive of China, and so I'll now move to observer organizations and not take any more party interventions. I have IUCN.
Thank you, Chair. This intervention is on behalf of IUCN and ZSL. We strongly recommend the adoption of a genus-level resolution for Anguilla deals, and it's concerning that the draft could not be supported as agreed by the intersessional working group. It's been well evidenced in 3 reports submitted to CITES that both legal and illegal harvest and trade of listed and non-listed Anguilla deals is complex and interlinked. As such, a resolution that does not account for this would significantly reduce the benefit to the Appendix 2 listed European eel. Therefore, we believe the resolution as presented in ComDoc 1817 would facilitate parties in ensuring that trade in all Anguilla deals is legal, traceable and sustainable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now consult with the Secretariat. All right, the chair has given this matter consideration, and essentially the Animals Committee and the Intersessional Working Group in the Standing Committee also have done extensive work on this document and this issue. And I go back to, I have heard support from the Asian region for what China is suggesting, that it be limited to European eel, but I also have heard support from other regions, the Dominican Republic, North America, the US in support, and the UK in support of, because of the illegal trade in European eels, of keeping the resolution as is in this COM document. I don't think at this time that we have available to us, the Standing Committee can resolve these two divergent views, and therefore my suggestion, because it will be discussed extensively, is that we send the COM document with the change on farmed to read raised in aquaculture, and the rest of the document as is that came from the drafting group here in COM 17 to the Conference of the Parties for discussion. And so that's my way forward. I think it's the fairest way to try to, because even if we resolve it here, you will be discussing these changes to a resolution at the COP, so we might as well send the COP with all the text that has been put forward and start the discussion with that. So that's my way forward, and I'm looking for agreement, thumbs up from the Standing Committee. I'm seeing nodding heads. Thank you. I know this is a difficult one, so thank you for that in the spirit of compromise, as India suggested was, which I was coming to send the document to COP20 for resolution there. Oh, and then, yep. So that takes care of the COM document, but basically, and we will note China's comments in the summary record of this meeting, but finally the committee agrees that decisions 19.218 and 19.221, so 19.218 to 19.221 can be deleted. Do I have agreement on that? Seeing nodding heads on that one. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, my apologies. I'll be clearer. I guess I tried to wrap it up too quickly. So the Standing Committee notes documents SC 78, documents 69.1 and 69.2. The committee agrees to submit the draft decisions and draft resolution on anguilla eels in SC 78, COM 17 as amended by Poland, the use of the word raised in aquaculture, and amended by the Republic of Korea. That's the one I forgot, for consideration at COP20. And then we will note the comments made by China and others here in the summary record of this meeting, and we agree that these decisions can be deleted related to eels. So that is the clearer summary, and I see nodding heads. So thank you, and my apologies to Korea for forgetting their amendment. And that brings us to the final COM document, COM 18, on CITES and livelihoods and draft decisions on livelihoods. And I turn to the working group chair, Zambia. Yeah, this was a working group. Zambia, to introduce the document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As co-chairs, Zambia and Peru, we were assigned to have an in-session meeting with the other members on this matter. The co-chairs of the in-session working group, Peru and Zambia, would like to thank the working group members for their active engagement in the discussions which we had yesterday. As mandated, the in-session working group reviewed the proposed amendments to Resolution COMP 16.6, Rev COP 18, and the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 and 3 of the document SC 78, Doc 28, as well as the comment heard during the plenary. Given the limited time, I regret to inform you that the working group was not able to reach consensus on either the proposed amendments to the resolution or the draft decisions. There was a general agreement, however, to present the different options which were decided for considerations at COP. With regards to the proposed amendments to Resolution COM 16.6, as noted in the COM document, no consensus was reached in the in-session working group as to whether any amendments to Resolution COM 16.6 should be proposed to give reference to the 6 strategies. In the meantime, it has been proposed by some working group members to explore the option of informally making refinement or a complete review of the 6 strategies between now and COP20 to gain a broader acceptance. However, a proposal was put by Canada on the way forward, which gained broad support from most of the members in the in-session group, namely to submit the proposed amendments to the resolution for consideration at COP20 so that all the work of the intersession working group on livelihoods does not go in vain. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I now open the COM document for discussion by standing committee members. And I have Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like to have the following points to make. Firstly, we have, as we have said in the plenary and in the session of the working group, the EU and its members, 27 member states, do not support the 6 strategies being referenced in Resolution 16.6. The title of the strategies is, in essence, maximizing benefits from the trade in CITES listed species. The strategies ask parties to ensure transparency in piercing and to address issues of value chains, piercing structures, and business opportunities. These are matters of economic policies. Asking CITES to influence and address economic policies goes very far and is not covered by the mandate of the CITES. As mentioned previously, other parts of the strategies are already covered by Resolution 16.6, which would be a duplication. Secondly, Madam Chair, what needs to be emphasized, the working group did not find consensus on the proposed amendments to Resolution 16. There was a majority that objected the proposed amendments, but despite this opposition, they were not deleted. At the same time, a new amendment was taken on in the preamble, amending the word "noting" to "recognizing." This was only supported by some participants, while the majority rejected. Therefore, the document does not reflect the views in the working group correctly, which is a bit concerning. Hence, we do not agree that the Standing Committee can submit this document to COP. Instead, we suggest to only submit the draft decisions for the consideration of the Conference of the Parties, as this was the majority's view in this working group session. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I turn to Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. As the document confirmed that the in-session working group did not reach a consensus, we will support the submission of this matter to the Conference of the Party for final decision. Thank you.
I have the UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK supports the comments of Poland. Thank you.
I have Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Just like Poland, in the spirit of compromise, we support submission to COP20 of the 3 options of the draft decision. We are also opposed to amendment to Resolution 16.6 that makes reference to the 6 strategies. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to support the further discussions of this at the next COP due to different views of parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We support sending this document to the next COP. But I do have a question. We are sending 3 options to the COP. So I'm just wondering if wouldn't it be much more easier to use brackets in this case? I know that this conference does not use brackets, but I think things will be very complicated if we submit 3 documents at the same time to COP for consideration. We can even have problems on deciding in the basis of which document we would start the negotiations. And so I think that we could try to merge all those options in just one, just to make it easier at the next COP so that we can move forward. For that, we would need to use brackets. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I open the floor to observer parties, and I have Nigeria.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given the prevailing circumstances, Nigeria supports the discussion of this document at COP20. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have the USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the United States, as with our previous intervention on this agenda item, the United States would like to note for the record that we are unable to take a position on this matter at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Canada.
Thank you, Madam Chair. From our perspective, the document accurately reflects the views that were shared during the working group. On one end, there are some parties that did not support the referencing the strategies in Resolution 16.6, but on the other end, there were some parties that did want to retain this reference. Considering this, there was agreement in the working group that this decision should take place at the COP. So in this sense, the document is a balanced approach. It recognized that there were divergent views, and it provides information necessary to the COP to consider the matter. We support sending the document as is, including the amendments to the resolution to facilitate further discussion. As mentioned by the co-chair, many suggestions were raised during the contact group. Let's pick this up at COP and not undermine the work of the intersessional working group, who work really hard on the strategy. And so we really look forward to the COP to engage constructively in discussion to see how we may reconcile the different perspectives and land something that works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I have at least 7 parties wishing to speak on this. I'm cognizant of the time. I will try to pick some of them representing different regions so we can get a view from that. And then I have one more standing committee member, Poland. So if it's okay with Poland, if I can call on 3 parties and then I'll give you the floor, or do you want to speak now? Rules of procedure say I give it to the standing committee. So Poland.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair. So we just would like to reiterate, hearing the already expressed views, that if this document has no consensus on it, the standing committee shouldn't propose it as it is to the consideration of the COP, and any amendments parties wish to make to the document can be provided respectfully to the COP separately. Yeah, thank you.
All right, I will choose parties, as I said, to give some geographic balance so we can at least hear root. So my apologies, I can't call on you all, but I will call on China.
Thank you, Chair. China supports the views and notes of the working group chair.
The notes of the in-session working group already reflects some members expressed support for amending the resolution to recognize the 6 strategies, but others did not agree. We realized that the so-called majority mentioned by Poland within the in-session working group is because the 27 Euro countries that have reached a consensus, plus the EU itself. So it's have occupied the overwhelming majority of voices. So we suggest submitting the current document with regard to the actual revision by the EU. And China suggested it be put into the summary record. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We note your suggestion on the summary record. I go to Tanzania.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tanzania wishes to align itself with previous speaker, China, Zambia, recognizing the importance of livelihood issues to the implementation of the present convention. So we highly recommend that this matter be debated during the COP and be decided during the COP. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Iran.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me the floor. As previous speaker, we would like to refer this document to the COP20. And also, we would like to agree with Brazil that regarding to discussion on this document to finalize and maybe present one option rather than 3 options to the COP. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I will lastly call on Senegal.
Merci. Thank you, Madam Chair. We would first of all, to thank the working group for taking Senegal's suggestion on option 3 on board. Now, on the strategy issue, there was indeed no consensus. We must continue to work on this intersessionally. I would like to see this document submitted to the COP, and I would like to have this one document submitted to the COP rather than 3 separate ones. Thank you.
Thank you. I now see if there is one observer organization wishing to speak. I said we had some geographic representation from Southern, West, and the Asian region, so I will now give one observer. I will turn to World Wildlife Fund.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Noting the different views expressed, we consider it accurate to say that there was disagreement on the content of the resolution and that parties at the COP will be better informed on this point if the entire COM document is submitted. So we would favour, as Canada did, that the entire document is submitted, and that's without any prejudice to a position that we would take at the COP itself. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I will now end discussion in the cognizant of the time and consult with the Secretariat and see how we find a way forward on this issue. All right, as I did with several other COM documents where we didn't have consensus, my recommendation to the Standing Committee would be that because we have no consensus on the resolution, we have no consensus on the decisions, and having heard sort of the compromise is that everything goes to the COP. There was strong support for that to put it all out. And so I would recommend the Standing Committee agrees with sending COM 18 to the COP for discussion and resolution. I know Brazil had said to try to combine these documents, but that would entail a great amount of work that we no longer have time for, or the Secretariat. We're only, 5 months away to the submission of documents in June. I think we've done our best effort here with the working group that we had. We had all the views. I think that's why we have 3 options and we have the text of the resolution. So we will send this to the COP. That's my recommendation to the Standing Committee members. So now I look for, support of that recommendation from the chair or disagreement. And if there's disagreement, what do we do? So I turn to Poland.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and apologies for coming back to this issue. But if I got that right, you are proposing to submit to the Conference of the Parties document which has not reached the consensus within the working group. And maybe you would like to suggest to, in the spirit also of compromise, to refer to the original document which was presented with the document 28 on this issue. Yes, because the one document has already included options which hasn't reached a consensus, so we have some consensus about that. Thank you very much.
Give me a moment to think about that suggestion. Okay, so Poland has offered a different solution, which would be that we, rather than send COM 18 to the COP, we send the original document, SC 78, document 28, to the COP, noting there wasn't consensus. So I really would like to hear the views of the Standing Committee on either the chair's option or what Poland has put forward. One would send the COM document here, and the other one would send the document 28, and with a note that the Standing Committee was not able to reach any consensus on this document, and therefore we're sending the entire document to the COP. So I look for views. I've got the UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would support Poland's option of submitting document 28 to the COP for consideration. Thank you.
I have Canada. I will allow it because Canada did chair this working group and probably more so than me has a sense of what the discussions were, and now I see Canada saying no.
Thank you, Chair. Canada did not chair this working group, and we do congratulate our colleague who did chair this working group because it was a difficult, and we remember only a 1-hour discussion. And I think what we're living here is the result of such an action-packed agenda, Chair, for which I greatly admire your ability to walk us through this. But in that, Canada is certainly taking lessons from this and will think very strategically about the things we put our support behind at the Conference of the Parties. But in this case, we agree with Poland. At this point and juncture, it would be best for the Conference of the Parties to begin this debate again based on the document that was submitted to the Standing Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and my apologies to Zambia. Yes, they chaired this one. I was thinking of the Canadian had offered an option in the group. So what I'm looking for the Standing Committee then, because I saw some nodding heads, of basically we would send SC 78 document 28 to the COP. And the summary record from discussions here at SC 78 will be available and noted, and we'll send this document to the COP 28. I have Kenya and then Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. You recall yesterday Kenya raised the flag to ask the due effect of the preamble text on recognizing the 6 strategies, and Kenya will not get an indication of what the due effect is. In the preamble statements, you say what you are doing and the effect to what you are doing. So we could not see, when we recognize the 6 strategies, what is the effect of recognizing those 6 strategies. Similar to the text in para X, where the parties are invited to follow, again, we could not see the due effect.
Kenya, I ask your indulgence. I think that that question and that discussion will happen when the document goes to the COP now. I really can't have that discussion here. I have no consensus, and what I'm just trying to do now is find a way forward as to which document goes to the COP. And so what I'm looking for is if Standing Committee members can support document 28 in its entirety going to the COP.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya would support the submission of the original document, SC 78, Doc 28, to the COP. Thank you.
And your comments and questions will be noted in the record. I have Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We agree with you, and we think this goes almost in line with our previous suggestion, because now we have just one option to discuss. I think this would be much easier. So we completely agree that we should send document 28 to the COP. Thank you.
So I will conclude that the Standing Committee agrees to submit document SC 78, document 28 to the Conference of the Parties for consideration. And noting the comments made during the discussion of the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee. Okay? Seeing nodding heads, thank you. Thank you very much. I know how difficult this one was. And I take to heart Canada's suggestion of such a packed agenda and not having enough time to really discuss it, but hopefully the COP will give us that time. But time there will also be a packed agenda. So I think we take Canada's message to heart, I will, that we strategically think about how we handle all of this at the COP. And what really gets to Brazil's intervention early in the week, what is the core matters that are the core implementation of CITES. Thank you. So I've been counseled we still have 25 minutes, and we had some agenda items we never discussed, so I am going to try to do them as best I can. So I'll ask the Secretariat to tell us what those items are while the Chair tries to find her papers.
Thank you, Chair. We will try to go perhaps up to 4:50. 10 minutes to 5, and we propose in the order as follows: 14, CITES Strategic Vision; 21, Capacity Building Framework; 74, Trade in Medicinal and Aromatic Plant Species, and we'll see where we land from there. I repeat again: 14, CITES Strategic Vision; 21 capacity building framework, 74 trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species, and we'll reassess the time again. Thank you.
So I open the agenda item 14, CITES Strategic Vision, and I give it to the CITES Secretariat to present that document. Brazil, is this on what I'm proposing to discuss yet? Can you make it brief?
Sure. So just a question to Secretariat. What happens with the documents that we're not going to discuss here? So to be very clear, what would happen? Thank you.
We did say that earlier. They would be basically a notification would go out from the Secretariat asking for comments on those specific agenda items. We would then take those comments, and the Standing Committee Chair will consult with the Standing Committee members in a way forward on those agenda items. We tried to pick items that we felt could handle that type of discussion. So I ask the Secretariat again to introduce the CITES Strategic Vision.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Thank you, Madam Chair. The document presents a comparative analysis to show the alignment between the CITES Strategic Vision 2021 to 2030 and the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. It also contains amendments to Resolution Conf 16.4 and Resolution 18.3. In terms of the goals 1.4 of the CITES strategy, the Standing Committee is requested to put forward a indicator 1.1.4, and the Secretariat would like to know if the Secretariat would like to continue work on an additional objective 1.4, and if that should be added to decision 19.14. And that is in paragraph 22. The recommendations are there.
Thank you. So we're talking about the recommendations in paragraph 22, which is basically, do we need to add another strategic indicator? We did work on this document at SC 77. We're not revisiting that work. So it's the recommendations in paragraph 22, and I open it up to the Standing Committee members. Of Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like to make comment on the recommendation D. Standing Committee already agreed to submit to COP indicator 1.4.1. And we believe that the most important thing is to put into practice the evaluation using the indicators, including indicator 1.4.1. Therefore, we support deletion of decision 19.14. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other Standing Committee members? I have Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Brazil only requests additions to Annex 1 and Annex 3 when it refers to the coming global biodiversity framework. We only want that to be followed by the following expression: adopted by the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity at its 15th meeting. This is just to recognize that the KMGBF was adopted under the CBD, and this is quite important. If the document have more than one reference to that, we can use the acronym KMGBF, so that we are all right with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brazil. I open it up to observer parties. I have the USA.
Thank you, Chair. As with previous interventions, the United States is unable to take a position on this agenda item at this time. This is without prejudice to our ability to express positions on this matter in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Canada can support the recommendations in paragraph 22. With respect to recommendation D, Canada feels it is not necessary to renew decision 19.14, and we would support deleting decision 19.14. Thank you, Chair.
China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China align ourselves with Japan and Canada. Thank you.
New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. We also support the recommendations, and we agree with recommendation 22D that no additional indicators are required and decision can be deleted. Thank you.
Thank you. EU.
The European Union and its member states welcome the document and agree with its recommendations A, C, E, and F as presented. Regarding recommendation D, we agree with the Secretariat that it might be premature to propose additional indicators for adoption if it is unclear how to measure them.
Mexico.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. To be brief, we align ourselves with the positions of Canada and Japan. Thank you.
And then finally, Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We agree with the draft recommendations and also the deletion of D. Thank you.
I will conclude discussion on this and take a moment. So I ask the Standing Committee members, the way I conclude is that the Standing Committee agrees to recommendation A in paragraph 22, A, B, C, E, and F, and then the Standing Committee agrees to not continue work on an additional indicator for objective 1.4, and therefore agrees to delete decision 19.14 to the Conference of the Parties. And that's my suggested way forward based on the discussion. I've got nodding heads, so I think that's where we are. And I also note the Brazil editorial comment that will be corrected. Thank you. Try for one more. Agenda item document 21, the capacity building framework, and I ask the Secretariat to introduce this document.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document provides an update on the development of a CITES integrated capacity building framework, following a needs-based approach and guided by and aligned with the long-term strategic framework for capacity building and development of Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The Secretariat was unable to make progress during the year due to constraints in time and human resources. We will continue this work in 2025 with the aim of organizing the regional consultations after COP20 in consultation with the chairs of the Standing Committee, the Animals and Plants Committees, and the Finance and Budget Subcommittee, guided by the Standing Committee Intersessional Working Group. The Standing Committee is invited to propose the renewal of Decision 19.40 and the revision of 19.41 to 19.43 as contained in annex of this document. Thank you.
So I'll try to make this one quick. This seems pretty straightforward. That basically I'm looking to Standing Committee members if they agree to propose the renewal of Decision 19.40 and the revisions of Decisions 19.41 to 1943 as contained in the annex to the present document of the Conference of the Parties. So any discussion of that? And I'm, at this point in time, looking only at standing committee members. I will take silence or no discussion that we can agree with that recommendation in paragraph 10. I have Kenya.
Chair, for purposes of continuing building capacity, and especially in developed countries, we support the renewal of the two decisions. Thank you. Three decisions, sorry.
So I asked the standing committee that I don't see anyone. What I'm looking for right now is, does the standing committee agree? Then what I've heard is support for recommendation in paragraph 10. I've seen nodding heads. Thank you. Okay, they want me to try to take one more. This one's complex. So I'll go to agenda item 74, trade in medicinal and aromatic plant species, decision 19.264. And who's introducing it? The secretary. And the secretariat will introduce this document.
Thank you, Chair. At PC 26, the Plants Committee agreed to implement a cross-reference between the CITES database and the MPNS database with disclaimers. The draft decisions in Annex 1 provide for its implementation contingent on external resources. The Secretariat reports on the analysis of e-commerce supply chains in products of CITES-listed medicinal and aromatic plant species that was undertaken and shared with the Plants Committee. Substantial feedback delayed finalization for SC 78, but completion is expected by COP20. PC 26 recognized the need for a new resolution on medicinal and aromatic plant species beyond traditional medicine. At PC 27, discussions emphasized complementarity with other agreements and CITES standards. Draft decisions in Annex 1 instructs the Plants Committee to continue considering the draft resolution on MAP species. The Standing Committee is invited to recommend to COP20 to replace decisions 19.261 to 19.264 with the draft decisions in Annex 1, and to request the Secretariat, in consultation with the Plants Committee Chair, to submit the final MAP study for consideration by the COP. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I open this up to the Standing Committee members. We're looking at the recommendations in paragraph 15, and I have Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. The representative for the Asia region of the Plant Committee previously distributed the draft report to the parties, collected feedbacks, and considered comments from members of the region. Following this process, it was determined that a further review of the report's content is necessary before its submission. In light of this, the Asia region requests the removal of Section B of the paragraph 15 in this document. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. USA.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On behalf of the North America region, I'm speaking, and I think that I would say that we're going to align with Kuwait, but we would like to say that we largely support the recommendation 15A, but we do not support 15B, as the Plants Committee has proposed finalizing the report during the next intersession. Also, I submitted this by email, and I hope the Secretariat received it. It's coming about 24 hours late. With regard to recommendation A, we support the draft decisions of the Plants Committee, and because we're mindful of finalizing this work in the next intersession. And while we're supportive of referring nomenclature issues to the nomenclature specialist for flora and UNEP WCMC as recommended in draft decision 20AA(b), we are mindful of potential workload implications and risks of incorporating an external database into CITES as suggested in the November 2024 draft report, which proposes automating nomenclatural reviews. We seek to ensure that parties and Plants Committee remain fully understand the scope, format, and process for this work. We are generally supportive of the work to implement cross-references between CITES databases and the Medicinal Plant Names Service, services as agreed by the Plants Committee at PC 26 and outlined in draft decision 20 AAC, although we would like to ensure continued Plants Committee consultation. To this end, we recommend amendments to draft decision 20 AA. Paragraph A, we would delete the word finalize and change it to submit. And then we would add the word draft before study. So it would read, submit the draft study developed under decision 19.261 to the Plants Committee for consideration. Recommendation B, we would add a phrase at the end after the words necessary. We would say reporting back to the Plants Committee to provide a full list of items referred for review. We would add the word and a new subsection C. Work with the nomenclature.
Sorry, USA, I really think at this point we are running out of time to have everyone consider this amendment. So I will consult with the Secretariat. What I have heard so far in this discussion that there is support for 15A and perhaps we delete B and we basically can look at these draft decisions at the COP would be my suggested way forward, because at this point, at this late hour, I can't imagine that everyone else is going to be able to absorb these changes and consider them to the draft decisions. They can be made at the COP. I go to Brazil.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think your suggestion makes a lot of sense. I just want to put in the record that Brazil understand the importance of this work, but also we think it's really important to include in this work the notion of access and benefit sharing, which is a very important pillar of the Convention of Biological Diversity. It's not there, and we think it's of utmost importance to have this principle in this work. Thank you very much.
I take your point, Brazil, and I think that's a suggestion you can also make at the COP. I'll go to the US, but the chair is running out of patience.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support your way forward, and we would just note perhaps that the Standing Committee did not have an opportunity to review the draft decisions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, we can note that when we send the draft decisions forward. And therefore, I would suggest the Standing Committee concludes. We agree to 15A, and we will send these decisions forward to the COP with the note that we did not have time to discuss it, and maybe that's important for the COP to note because they give us these big packed agendas with all these decisions, and we need to be better at managing these decisions and setting priorities associated with decisions. So thank you. I know this is important, and we had much discussion at Plants Committee, and that's why I know we wouldn't have time for these amendments right now. And with that, I conclude the agenda. I think there's two documents we didn't get to, 72 and 78. Oh, okay. So the agenda items for you to pay attention when the notification comes out that we didn't discuss were 22, 72, 78, and 24. So, and 30. So 5 items. So out of the 87 agenda items, we got through 82, and that's probably more than I expected. Okay, I will give the floor to the Secretariat because we never took any executive summaries to explain the process for the agreement to the executive summaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would invite parties to look at Rule 19 of the Rules of Procedure of a Standing Committee, which explains what you have been receiving is a concise executive summary of the decisions that has been taken by the Standing Committee. So it's important to note the difference between executive summary and summary record. The summary record will contain the interventions, and especially for those who made an intervention that said, for the record, I want this to be recorded. It will be in the long summary record that will be published 40 days normally after the Standing Committee. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to adopt any executive summaries for this session because we prioritize agenda items. So if you look at Rule 19, paragraph 1, so in that case, they shall be sent by email to the members and acting regional members for endorsement after the meeting. So this is exactly what we'll be doing. We will be posting them online, of course, so everybody can see it, but then we will be receiving comments by the members and acting regional members, hopefully soon. I hope you'll be ready to review them and actually send me comments, hopefully within 7 days, I'm hoping, or 10 days, depending on how long it takes for you to go back home. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I turn us to the remaining items on our agenda, which is agenda item 85. Any other business? Not seeing any requests, so hopefully there's no other business. And then 86 is to determine the determination of the time and venue of the 78th meeting, and I turn to the Secretariat to speak to that.
Thank you, Chair. The 79th meeting of the Standing Committee will take place on the 23rd of November, 2025, which is the day before COP20. And the 80th meeting will take place on the 5th of December, 2025, which is on the last day, the same day as the last day of COP20. And obviously, both of them will take place in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, and that brings us to closing remarks, and I will turn to the Secretary General to lead us off on that.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Your Excellencies, distinguished members of the Standing Committee, parties and observers, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you most sincerely to all for the collaboration and the respect shown throughout our debates. Congratulations, Madam Chair, for your leadership, which has led us through this complex and demanding agenda. We are grateful for your ability, impartiality, and firm hand on the guidance of the debates. I'm most sincerely grateful to our donors, and in particular Switzerland, for their generous financial support so that we can meet here in the CICG. Particular thanks to His Excellency Minister Abdul Kakimov for having joined us on Monday to present the beautiful city of Samarkand and to show us the impressive logo for COP20. And my deep gratitude to Panama for their generous offer to welcome and host the COP21, welcoming us once again to the beautiful city of Panama. For the first time, we have reached 600 participants at a meeting of the Standing Committee. That shows the strength of this convention and the commitment of all to reach our joint goal of conserving wildlife for future generations. Over the last 6 days, you have covered an extraordinarily full agenda, 87 items with 127 working documents, 14 session documents, and 50 information documents. I would suggest most respectfully that there be a period of reflection on this new record when you get home. Abiding with the convention is fundamental for its work, and I am pleased to see the work of those who meet their commitments and show clear progress in the effective implementation of the Convention for timber, bird, and marine species. We will continue to help you with these efforts. the international community recognizes ever more the repercussions of crime against wild fauna and flora, both on nature and on people. International cooperation continues to be essential in our fight against wildlife crime. The excellent results of the work carried out by our parties with the support of ICWIC are also reasons for optimism. The activities of the task forces to fight illegal trade in big cats and timber, the work underway and advances to fight against trafficking of species such as totoaba and the protection of the vaquita and which is endangered is important, just as the work by parties in Africa. This meeting reaffirmed our continued importance and the efforts we make to prevent the illegal killing of elephants through the work in the new phase of MIKE. And we have also seen and recognized the efforts to reduce the illegal trade in ivory and reduce its risks. For the first time, the COP20 is going to be studying a resolution on eels, and I'm also pleased to see the ambitious working plan for sharks and rays, as well as the possibility that parties will be able to give greater detail in their information on the localization of shark and ray captures. As an example of other successes, we have seen the review of significant trade, and we've had a lifting of the recommendation for the suspension of trade on the emperor scorpion and other progress made on the sustainable use of sandalwood in Africa. Secretariat most warmly welcomes and thanks you for your contributions to the study on CITES and forests, Brazil wood, the commerce, trade in medicinal and aromatic plants, and the impact of exemptions for Dalbergia and Djibouti. I am inspired to see the strong support and participation of young people in CITES and the first Global Youth Summit, which will be held this year in May in Singapore. And it's going to be an excellent stepping stone for the next generation of CITES leaders. As we are coming towards the end, I want to dedicate a moment to recognize someone very special, Ms. Susan Bengtsson, our head of the Administration and Finances Unit, who is retiring after a decade of ceaseless dedication to this convention. Suzanne, your journey has been extraordinary. Before joining CITES, you brought your experience and commitment to the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Conventions, and you contributed to the efforts of the maintenance of peace with the United Nations Secretariat. We are profoundly grateful. I am profoundly grateful for your inestimable contributions and your friendship towards all in the Secretariat. Sincerely, I don't know what I will do without you. You have been my rock. You have always offered wise advice and ceaseless support. On behalf of the whole CITES family, thank you. We will miss you very much, but we will also celebrate this new chapter in your life, that we wish it to be full of joy, adventure, and all the wonderful things you deserve.
Ahora más lágrimas.
Now some more tears. To my wonderful team, you have made every effort, maybe too much, to prepare and carry out without any difficulties and with a great deal of discipline our SC 78. As always, I would like to thank you immensely for your intense work over the last few months, and I wish you a good recovery. Everything starts again very soon. Ladies and gentlemen, I am looking forward to our meeting at the COP20, where we will continue our journey to support the conservation of wildlife for people and the planet. And do not forget to celebrate the World Wildlife Day, which we will be holding under the impactful subject theme, Wildlife Conservation Finance, investing in people and the planet. We invite you all to join the event online or in person at the United Nations Palace in Geneva on the 3rd of March. A good journey home to everyone. Thank you, and we'll see you in Samarkand.
So I will add my closing remarks. I will try to be somewhat brief. I echo everything the CITES Secretary General has said, but I will say a few things. I would like to take a few minutes to express my appreciation and give thanks, since I didn't let you do it at the beginning of the meeting. Over this past week, we have discussed and moved almost 80 agenda items, and that is something to be truly proud of. This would not have been possible without your hard work, cooperation, and compromise over the past week. Through our work, we are in a good place for our next COP, which will be held in Uzbekistan, and we thank Uzbekistan for hosting. I would like you all to know that your work in your home country and your work here at the Standing Committee is important and appreciated. You work tirelessly on behalf of our planet's plants and animals who cannot speak for themselves. I would like to thank our Secretary General and the CITES Secretariat for an awesome and impressive job this week. Speaking on behalf of the Standing Committee, we are grateful for your time, energy, patience, and leadership. Other important thanks go to Switzerland for hosting our meeting, and to the interpreters and their technical team. Your work behind the scenes is vital to our communication, both inside the Standing Committee and to the outside audience who are able to watch our meeting in countries all over the world. I would also like to thank the Standing Committee members, the observer parties, and the others in attendance whose work contributes to wildlife conservation, and personally for your patience with me this week, where I tried to be objective and give you all time. It is an honor to chair the Standing Committee and to work with all of you. I look forward to seeing you again at the next COP. Sorry, it's Saturday and the emotions come out. Until then, I wish you peace and safety, and I thank you for all you do. And I want to end on a humorous note. I was given this button at the beginning of the week that if I had to use this button, we were in real trouble. So I'd like you to hear the button. It's basically a blah, 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 and it cuts you off.
Blah, 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 blah.
And with that, do I conclude the meeting? Or yes, with that, I conclude the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee and wish you all a safe trip home and some rest.
May I ask you to turn around and wave and thank the interpreters. Turn around and wave at the interpreters, giving them your thanks for all the extra minutes and their patience and their generosity. Thank you.